Hi everyone, it's Elise from Kid and Clouder Colouring Classes and welcome to our Colouring Tip Tuesdays, short videos to answer popular questions you've been asking about your colouring. In this video today, I'm going to be taking you through how the official Copic numbering system works and how we can use that to make colour blends. So there's a lot of conflicting information around how to make blends, but I often have people come to our classes frustrated because what they've been taught isn't allowing them to get that same depth in their colouring that our students are outputting. And a lot of that comes down to understanding how lightsource works to give your objects dimension, and then how to choose markers to make up a blend that showcases that lightsource clearly. To help explain what I mean by that, let's first break down what lightsource is and why it's important. So when colouring any object, we really do have to keep in mind light source. Light source is anything that makes light in our scenes and must be present for an object to be seen. It's what determines the light and shade on an object. So typically in our classes, we work with ambient lighting, which is a major source of light in a scene, like the sun or overhead lighting. And what that does is it casts big cones of light over your entire project, rather than spotlighting or directional light. So you may have seen in some videos, for example, sometimes people will say, well, the light's coming from the left, so left is light, right is dark. However, when we work with ambient lighting, which is typically the most flattering for portraiture, animals, things like this, just a general light source. So what this does is when working with ambient lighting, the light hits the parts of the object here that are raised up toward our light rays, no matter what side the object or light is on. And the areas that are further back end up in shadow. Now between highlight and shadow, we have what's called the midtone, which is considered the true color of the object because it's neither affected by light or shade. So those three things are really important when it comes to coloring. So I'm just going to show you this really simply on this image here. We can just take a look at the books and you can see straight through the middle of this red book, for example. Notice how that's the lightest part. So what I'm imagining is that this book is rounded like this. So what's happening is the middle of that book is the highest point. It's popping out toward us. So as my light rays come down, it hits the top of that book first, and that's why it's appearing lightest like that. Then what's happening on the two sides is my sides are curving down and away from that light. And because it's got that curving shape, and as it curves away from that light, it ends up more in shadow. So that's why we get darker along those very edges to show that curve. And in between that highlight and that shadow, we bring in that mid-tone true color of the object. So whenever we color anything up, we're always referring back to light source. And that's what gives our coloring that dimension and that depth, makes it look three-dimensional on the page. Now, why is that important when it comes to making blends? So with Copic, they actually have their own method for creating blends using their numbering system that actually works right in with that light source theory that I've just shown you. So this is widely considered to be the most effective and easiest way just to get started with your markers and help you to get that depth. It's a really simple guide once you see how it's broken down. So let's take a look at the real basics of how this works. Now we've got a whole different bunch of letters and numbers on the end of a cap of a marker. So the first thing that we see are the letters. Now the letters are the color family. So for example, B equals blue. RV equals red violet, and so forth, and that makes up the color wheel of all the color families. Now then we've got two numbers, so you may have been referring to your markers as, for example, B32, but it's actually meant to be B32. The numbers are actually separate from each other, and we need to look at each number separately in order to understand how the system works. Now, the first number refers to the saturation or even the tone of the color. So the saturation is how bright the color is. So the closer down to 0 it is, the brighter and more pure that color is meant to be. The closer to the 9 it is, the more gray there is in your saturation. So it's usually a darker, more gray-based blend. Now this first number is less important when we make blends. So we can chop and change that first number around pretty easily when we're mixing colors, just based on the saturation or the vibrancy of the hue that we want to create and have that control of the color. What's most important when we're creating our blends is actually that second number. So the second number is meant to help us with communicating light source, and this refers to the value of the color. Now, value is how light or dark a color is. So the lower the number, the brighter the color. The higher the number, the darker the color. So for example, 0 is the lowest and the highest, 9 is the highest and the darkest. Now what the method is here for picking the colors is any markers that end between 0 and 3 are a highlight color. Markers ending between 4 and 6 are a mid-tone color, and markers ending between 7 and 9 are a shadow color. So we explained light source at the start of that lesson where we want to incorporate highlight, mid-tone, and shadow in our work. So you can see here just how I broke down those marker numbers. We want to have at least 3 markers in our blends so we can show that highlight, mid-tone, and shadow. So let's put that into practice. So I've got some markers on the side here. Now these are my B90s. It's okay to refer to them as the B90s. It's an easier way to refer to your markers. But remember, it's B91, B93, and so forth. So I'm using all B90s here today. The good thing about using all the same first number is I know that they're the same level of saturation. They're going to blend together very nicely and I don't have to worry about them being a different tone or a different saturation level, and it might look a little bit out of whack. So working just with the B90s. Now remember, we want to keep in mind that light source. So that second number is what becomes important. So we want to pick a highlight color. So I've got here B91. So B91 ends in a 1. So that falls within the highlight range. So remember, any marker that ends between 0 and 3 is a highlight color. So I can put that one off the side as my highlight. Now I need a midtone. So midtone is any color ending between 4 and 6. And I can grab B95 for this. And now we also want a shadow color. So shadow colors are any markers ending between 7 and 9. And I've got my B99. So there are my 3 markers. So I'm just going to show you making a simple blend with them. And this is a great way that you can test any blends while you're doing your coloring and see how they work. So what I do is I just grab my B99 and I'm just holding my marker just as if I was going to write with it. I'm trying to use the side of the nib here. And what I'm doing is I'm just popping in and I'm doing a basic feathering stroke on the page. You can see I'm slightly lifting my wrist as I do this. Now this isn't a blending video, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this today, but I just want to show you how you can make simple swatches to test how your blends work together. If you'd like more information on the different strokes that you can do with your markers, we have a free class called Markers 101, and it takes you through all of the basic fundamentals. So we go into a lot of depth on what is light source, all the different strokes you can make, how you do your basic blending, skin, hair, blender marker. We go through everything and it's absolutely free. So you can head to kitandclouder.com and you'll see the big banner just on the homepage for free classes. So if you're really new and you don't know how to actually make marks with your markers yet, definitely check that class out because it's going to help you feel really confident using and blending these together. Okay, so next color, B95, and you can see I'm working down from dark to light, and I'm just overlapping these colors with multiple strokes over the top. And then I've got B91. You can see on the page, I've got B91 being my lightest color, creating that highlight, B95 being the midtone and creating my middle color there, and B99 for my shadow. So this is a suitable color blend to use. We've successfully shown the depth and dimension right there, incorporating all of the aspects of light source. However, the more colors that are available in a run, the less gaps there are in your blending, so the easier it is to actually get your blend smooth. So what you may notice here is you can see little lines between my colors. That's because there's quite a big jump when I go from, say, B91 to B95. So there's 3 different colors in between on the value scale that I've left out. So Copic actually make B93. So B93 sits between B91 and B95. And they also make B97. So B97 sitting between B95 and B99. By adding in these extra colors, I have less gaps between the colors in my blend, so it's going to make it easier for me to get everything smooth. So now let's try that out. So I've got B99 and I'm just doing the same thing I did before. Now instead of jumping straight to B95, I'm going down to B97. And I'm using that to help bridge between the colors. So these colors are pretty close together, so they're not going to have a lot of contrast between them to help you show that light source, but it's just helping you step down a little smoother. This is B95, and see already that transition between here is a lot smoother than this transition, and the colors look a lot bolder as well because we haven't desaturated them as much. B93, again straight over the top and blending that out, and then B91. So you can see definitely a lot easier to get that smoothness in the blend. So if you're doing your blends, don't shy away from using more markers if they're available to you. It's actually easier to get everything smooth. Sometimes I see people say you must only stick to 3 markers in a blend, but you're actually making it harder on yourself, not easier if you're a beginner. So that's a good little tip if you are struggling with your blending and trying to get that smooth. Don't be afraid to add in more colors to make that transition a little softer for you. So just another little thing as well. So remember that second number is what controls the value of the color. Now the value is how light or dark the color is. So when you go up in the first number, it doesn't necessarily mean that the marker is going to be darker, just that the tone or saturation level is a little different. So I know when we do skin tones, for example, we use E000, E00, E21, then back down to E11. And sometimes I get people say, why would I use E11 after E21? Isn't that going to be lighter? It's not actually lighter, it's a different tone. It's slightly more yellow based. So we don't use that first number to determine what's lighter or darker necessarily. So always refer to that second number. Now, just to help explain that a little bit easier as well, I'm going to show you about mixing up that first number. So I've got a green blend here now that I'm going to play with. So I've got G21. Now, G21 ending in a 1 means it's my highlight. G24 ends between 4 and 6, so it's my midtone. And G28. Now that's ending between 7 and 9, so it's my shadow color. So this is one of my favorite olive green combos. So this is a really good green combo, and you can see we already are incorporating the highlight, midtone, and shadow. So I'm just going to pop in here and I'll just lay the color down so you can see. So I've got G28, I've got G24. So sometimes Copic don't make sort of that in-between color, and that's when you just have to do a little bit more blending to get it smooth there, but it's still following that rule of the light source. But what I can do is say I want this even darker again. The darkest green that's made is actually G99. So you can see G99, so the first 9, meaning this is on the highest end of the scheme. So it's quite grey based, and it's also got a very high value of color as well. So quite a deep dark green, but it's a G90, whereas I've been using G20s. But if I come in here and show you, I can lay down my G99 and see how much darker that is there. Then I can come in with G28. Now 8 being lower than 9, this should still blend nicely together, and you can see that. Definitely blending nice and smoothly. It doesn't matter that that first number is different. And then I can continue my blend out. And you'll notice there all of a sudden that blend has so much more depth because I've introduced the color with that higher level of value and saturation as well. So you can mix and match that first number around to create different and unique blends. That does get a little bit more advanced though, and when we do our coloring classes, I always take you through the color theory and those choices behind what we're doing and how we're choosing that tone of color as well. And as we do more of these coloring tip videos, I'll start to focus on things about how you can change up that tone and the value of the color to something that suits you a little bit more. But this is a really great starting point if you're brand new to coloring and how to create blends, so you can feel comfortable going forward and creating something with quite a lot of depth. So I just want to show you this as well. This is my very, very used and loved Copic chart. So this is the official Copic marker color chart here. Always a great idea to print this out and fill it in with the colors you own. Not only is it a great way to see what you might not have in your collection yet, but what you can see is it lists all the colors chronologically and alphabetically. So basically, if I take this row, for example, this is all my G's, so all of my green colors here. And what I can do is I can look at this and I can see, okay, these are all the zeros, these are all the 10s, these are all the 20s, and I've got 40s, a little bit of 80s and 90s here. So I can see each of the colors in a run. So what's really helpful about this is, say I go, okay, I want to work with my G20s here. I can see all of the colors that are available in the G20s, and I can remember my basic rules. So remember, the basic rules are markers ending between 0 and 3 are highlights, and I can see straight away G20 and G21. Markers ending between 4 and 6 midtones, and I can see G24. And markers ending between 7 and 9 shadows, and I can see G28 and G29. So you can see at a glance very quickly what colors are all the same saturation level, so these are all the G20s, and then that second number, what is available to me in a run and what you may or may not have in your blends. My chart's all filled out, but it's okay if you've got bits here and there. You'll be able to easily see the numbers and see, okay, well, I've got, say, G12 over here, but I've got G24 over here, so I could mix them together because that second number works well. So that's a really good tool to have, and this is, I think, the best chart to help you actually create blends using this official Copic system as well. I've got a blank copy on our website. You can just pop in, download it, and fill it all in. You can find that at kitandclouder.com. Click on the Color Blends tab, and you'll be able to download that to fill in. You'll also find a whole lot of pre-made blends there as well that I've created for you that you can have a practice with. And you can also print out exactly what I'm talking about here, a little guide where I'm talking about those numbers and what they all mean, just as a refresher. It might seem a little bit confusing for now, but once you've done this a few times, it really does sink in very quickly, and it's a very easy method to remember to help you create those color blends. And it's going to help you get the most vibrancy and the most richness in your coloring. So I hope you found this mini video helpful. We will tackle more complex blends in later videos as well, but if you also have anything else you'd like to see answered in this video format, please pop me a message. You can also find more answers to popular questions over on our website, kitandclouder.com, via the Coloring FAQs button in the menu bar. You'll also find free coloring classes on our homepage to help you learn more. Thanks so much for watching, and happy coloring!